Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles are probably not as popular today, but back in the late 80s they were the biggest thing ever. Mostly thanks to the cartoon series by Fred Wolf Film Studio, which was a massive hit, being one of the most popular American cartoon series, and it still remains the most popular version of the Turtles after all these years. Popularity of a show meant that tons of different merchandise would follow. Toys, clothing, breakfast cereal and what have you. So of course video games would eventually be produced, and indeed, in 1989, Konami released the very first Ninja Turtles video game for the Nintendo Entertainment System and Famicom, and several old computers. In North America and Europe, the game was released by Ultra Games and Palcom Software respectively instead of Konami themselves, which was done as a workaround for Nintendo's strict publishing rules in America. Apparently a single company publishing more than 5 games a year bloats the market, but creating subsidiaries to do it instead was perfectly fine. Interestingly, this game is also the first piece of Ninja Turtles media that was published in Japan, where it was named Geikikame Ninja Den, or Legend of the Fierce Ninja Turtles. Can't let the Toads have all the ninja fun. The premise of the game is very simple. The Turtles are at war with their archenemy the Shredder, who looks pretty cool for someone named after an office appliance. The Shredder has a life transformer gun, which can reverse mutations, and the Turtles wanted to make their master, the Rat, back into a human. Oh, and Shredder kidnapped their friend April, because that's what bad guys do. That's the whole premise, short and simple. Notably, despite being based on Fred Wolf cartoon, the game actually uses an art style closer to the original Mirage comic books, probably to avoid alienating the fans of the original Turtles. Once you press start on the title screen, you will be taken to a top-down perspective overworld. This is how you travel between different locations in a stage. Once you enter a manhole or a building, you are taken to a side-scrolling section, which is the main gameplay mode. The controls are very simple. D-pad for moving and ducking, A for jumping, and B for attacking. Attacks can be done while moving and aimed up or down. Jumping feels kind of floaty and it does cause issues sometimes when small platforms are involved, but it's fine most of the time. Slightly tapping the A button gives you this small jump that works very well when you need to jump under a narrow ceiling. The jump's floatiness also leads to this quirk with one-tile gaps where you can simply walk over them, which is unexpectedly realistic. Also, the Turtles have a very familiar strut, and you can even walk in place like this. By pressing start, you can bring up the pause menu. Here you will see the map of a current stage's overworld, a message box where an ally of yours will deliver some useful information, sometimes, and most importantly you will see the portrait for each of the turtles and their current health. It doesn't just show you useful information though, it allows you to switch between the characters. Aside from separate health gauges, each turtle has his own weapon, which comes with its own properties like length and attack speed. Not that you would be able to tell in the overworld. Hey, you ever wanted to make a steamroller explode by poking it with an oversized toothpick? It's good fun. Anyway, the differences between the characters become instantly apparent when you enter a side-scrolling section. Leonardo is your average guy, he doesn't do much damage, but he has good attack speed and reach to balance it out. Raphael has much less reach than Leonardo, but his attacks are faster and slightly stronger than Leo's. Michelangelo attacks even faster than Raphael, but he deals the same amount of damage as Leonardo, with smaller hitbox. Donatello is your heavy damage guy. He deals the biggest damage and has the longest reach, but his attacks are slow. The horizontal attacks are slow, vertical ones are pretty fast for some reason. Now, usually you'd say that Donatello is indisputably the best character in the game, because he hits hard and reaches far. While there is some merit to that, Donatello isn't the universal solution to every problem. There will be times when his slow attack speed can lead to you getting damaged, especially when you're dealing with fast enemies. The game in general is pretty difficult, no small thanks to enemies who respawn as soon as you scroll the screen. One way or another, you will eventually receive damage. You can recover lost health by finding pizza in the side-scrolling sections. But even getting it can be hard, as shown by the first optional area in Stage 1, where you have to fight your way through 2 floors of enemies for quarter pizza and full pizza. Other stages also make you fight for slices of circular deliciousness, making even going for pizza a risk in itself. This makes places where you can get pizza easily more valuable. Pro tip: pizza respawns every time you exit the side-scrolling section. Oh, and in case you're thinking, it's fine, if the going gets tough and I'll die, I'll just lose a life and start from a checkpoint with full health. Well, that's not how things work around here. There are no lives in this game, like there are in most other older games. You have the turtles, 4 of them, and if a character runs out of health, you lose that character. That's it, they're gone, and you have to make do with whoever you have left. If you lose all of your characters, it's game over. The game even has to be extra cruel and only give you 2 continues, so mess up too much and your ass goes all the way back to stage 1. Thankfully it's not all doom and gloom, since there are things in the game that make the player's life easier. For starters, there are special projectile weapons that sometimes drop from the enemies. There are 4 types of projectiles you can get. Shuriken, free shuriken that you throw on a spread, boomerangs that you can actually catch to avoid wasting ammo, suck it Simon, and a scroll that makes you fire some kind of energy wave. Must be that legendary ninja magic. All the weapons are very useful, both because you can keep your distance to avoid getting hit, and because they deal a good deal of damage to most enemies. Sometimes more than the turtles do with their own weapons, which is weird. The most powerful weapon in the game is definitely the scroll. It kills every non-boss enemy in 1 or 2 hits. Even the bosses get easily demolished. The thing about the scrolls is that enemies don't actually drop them, at least I never saw that happen. You can only find them in a side-scrolling section in a specific spot, and just like with pizza, you can exit the section and come back to farm them, and there is no good reason not to. Chances are, you'll need them seeing how difficult this game can be sometimes. Additionally, there is a hidden mechanic that has to do with how your characters deal damage. When a turtle gets to 50% health and below, they get a good boost to their attack power. This even affects different characters differently. Leonardo only gets a slight buff, but Michelangelo starts dealing almost as much damage as Donatello does by default, and Donnie, who is already the strongest turtle, becomes even stronger. Huh? Raphael? No, he doesn't get anything. He's too cool to have hidden mechanics. My only problem with this is that it is never explained anywhere. The most you'll get is an allusion to it in the manual, which says that Michelangelo's courage will surprise you. I didn't even know this mechanic existed until I started digging for this video. Okay, now let's talk about the enemies, and there is a pretty good variety of them. Aside from the usual Mauser robots and foot soldiers, you get fly robots, some guy who throws boomerangs, miniature at 209s, giant frogs, maniacs with chainsaws, eyeballs on spider legs, and some poor guy who got set on fire and is now waiting for someone to put an end to his suffering. I don't think many of these enemies are actually from the cartoon. As you progress through the stages, you will eventually arrive at the points where you will be halted by a mini-boss like this, foot soldier here. Your bravery is commendable, but very foolish. All the other mini-bosses are also just normal enemies, except for Bebop, who you fight in the first half of stage 1. Enemies in the game are separated into enemy sets of sorts, meaning that you will only encounter certain enemies together. For example, you will only see these spider eyeballs together with these flying enemies and burning people, and never with these robots who look vaguely like Chrome Dome, who in turn are always paired with these balloons with rockets and these jumping flea robots, and so on. While the enemies from different sets don't appear together, the sets themselves are not fixed as to which set appears in which room. It's not unusual to see different enemy sets in the same room as you entered multiple times, and in some cases, I've seen enemy sets getting swapped while I was still moving through a room. One thing that I really don't like is that most enemies carry over between the stages. You've seen these enemies in stage 1, you'll see them in stages 2 and 3 and so on. The only stage with unique enemy sets is stage 5, that features its own enemies exclusively. Stage 6 also has unique enemies, but they are still mixed with the old ones. Since we are on the topic of stages, it has to be said that the game gives some good variety in terms of design. The only straightforward stages are the first one, which more or less just introduces you to how the game is played, and the final one, which is a huge enemy gauntlet. All other stages have some sort of gimmick going for them. Stage 2, for example, is pretty infamous for the swimming section where you're supposed to disarm several bombs under a strict time limit. People especially hate these electric plants. I'd argue this is intended to force you to learn to switch between the characters so you can avoid losing any of them, but your mileage may vary on how well that works out. Stage 3 is a big area of New York where you get to drive a turtle van. Some sections of the stage are closed off by these barriers that can only be destroyed by firing missiles at them, which are found indoors. While you don't need many missiles to reach the end of a stage, you do need a considerable amount of them if you want to explore every part of it. This stage is also the first one to allow you to recover the turtles you've lost before this point. You see, when a turtle runs out of health, he's considered captured. And by exploring this stage you can actually find the place where the captured turtle is being held. They lose any special weapons they had before getting captured, but they come back at full health. Do note that you can only save one character per stage. If you have saved the turtle in the current stage and then lost another one later on, you won't be able to save them until the next stage. Stage 4 is a maze of underground passageways that you have to navigate to reach the end boss. Most of the tunnels are a combination of enemy gauntlets and platforming challenges, with some instant death lava being thrown in. There isn't much to talk about in this stage. In stage 5 you're supposed to look for the Technodrome. You have 3 underground passages to choose from, and the Technodrome is located in one of them. There is no way to tell which one it is before you enter, so if you get to the end of this here cave and the Technodrome isn't there, you'll have to walk all the way back for all the enemies you had to fight to get here, and that's not very fun. And when you do find the Technodrome, you have to fight it as a boss. That's great fun. Stage 6 is my final stage, alright? It's a really long enemy gauntlet with some returning and several new enemy types, one of which deals a great amount of damage through both collision and by firing his laser cannon. What's even worse, given that the stage is pretty long, there are no checkpoints here at all, so if you lose a turtle at any point, even at the final boss, you will have to go through the entire stage again. And I think that's a little unreasonable, given how much you have to deal with here. Even worse still, since the character's health doesn't replenish between the stages, you can get here with all the turtles badly hurt, and there isn't much pizza to go around here, so you will probably have to use a continue, and that's if you even have a continue left. Now, the boss here, the Shredder himself, is pretty easy, but he has a projectile attack that kills you in one hit, so one mistake can cause you to go all the way back to the beginning of a stage. Again, the game is overall pretty difficult. This is definitely one of those games that you have to play multiple times to get good at. Another thing that adds to the difficulty, and not in a good way, is that everything in the game seems to have wonky hitboxes, which mostly concerns enemy collision. You can often see the enemy not connecting to your sprite, but dealing damage anyway. It isn't much of a problem for Leonardo and Donatello, but Raphael and Michelangelo can really suffer from this issue sometimes. Weirdly, this hitbox problem also applies to the turtles, as you can swing a weapon, not visibly hit anything, and still do damage. The big weirdness is that your hitboxes can linger after your attack animation already finished, like here. What even hit the flying head here? There is also this weird phenomenon with collision where the turtles can kind of phase into walls a little, which occasionally helps with platforming. While I am complaining about stuff, might as well mention the music. Don't get me wrong, the music is good, it's fun and energetic, but there is not much of it. There are only 2 tracks for the overworld sections, 3 tracks for the side-scrolling sections, and 1 theme for mini-bosses and stage bosses each. Stage 5 gets its own music, but not the final stage. Final Fight with the Shredder doesn't have a unique track either, it still plays the normal stage boss theme. Oh, and the iconic theme song from the cartoon, you know, this one? It's not in the game. At all. While it's not a deal breaker, it's still not a good thing. You know what also isn't in the game? Krang. He's nowhere to be found in this game at all, despite his spherical mobile fortress being in the game and the fact that Shredder technically works for him. Not even a single mention. Going back to the technical side, enemy spawn points also seem to work weirdly sometimes. I already mentioned that enemies respawn constantly as you scroll the screen, but sometimes the same spawn point can produce multiple copies of the same enemy, like here. This also adds a lot of frustration from the difficulty. The game is also prone to slowdowns whenever there is too much stuff on the screen, with some sprite flickering thrown in. The game overall is pretty good, despite its admittedly numerous flaws. If you enjoy very difficult games and don't mind occasional fake difficulty, I can recommend you check it out. The game is not available digitally due to Konami's license expiring though, and the cartridges can be pretty expensive, but you can find a good deal with due diligence. Just don't go for the ports for the old computers. Those are awful. Thank you for watching this video, my dear viewer. If you liked what you saw, click the like button, and if you want to see more, subscribe because more stuff is on the way. Keep on rocking, and I'll see you next time.